Five with Mel. This episode is brought to you by Yellow Cab Company of DC. If you're looking to avoid rideshare prices, then check out the Yellow Cab Company of DC when you are in the nation's capital. Many nations are afraid of the conflict that's happening currently between Russia and the Ukraine. Now, currently, Russia has troops on the border, and this has been going on since 2021. Now, back in 2021, Putin started putting troops closer and closer to the Ukraine border, and many world leaders assumed that sometime in 2022, that President Putin of Russia was going to invade the Ukraine. Now, with tensions building at the borders, many world leaders are trying to stop the tension from turning into a conflict or an all-out war. Now, many experts believe that war is inevitable at this time. But again, nations are coming together in Europe to try and deal with the building tension surrounding at the border between Russia and the Ukraine before they have to step in militarily. Now, many of the Western allies are backing the Ukraine. Many Western European nations and the United States are backing the Ukraine and essentially giving them the support that they think the Ukraine needs. But while they're giving them the support, many Western allies do not want to send troops to the border, and they're trying to deal with the situation diplomatically rather than with a conflict or entering into a war with Russia. Now, Russia has stated that they have no plans of invading the Ukraine. They're saying time and time again that they have no plans, that they have the right to have the troops at the border because it is with Russia. But while Putin is saying that, while that is the information coming out of Russia through spokespeople, many intelligence agencies from the United States and Western Europe believe from the intel that they're getting that that is a lie and that Putin is planning on invading Ukraine sometime in the near future. Now, again, at the moment, there is tension. There's a lot of tension building on the border. There's a lot of tension in the area. And it looks as though Ukraine is afraid that the Russian troops that are on the border at the moment could come into the Ukraine at any time. Now, today, Biden is meeting via video call with several world leaders in order to see what they are going to do. So Biden will be meeting with the European Commission's presidents, with French President Macron, with the German Chancellor Scholz, with the Italian Prime Minister Mario, and several others, including UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. And at the time, they're meeting on video call. They're meeting at this moment to see what they're going to do. Because number one, many of the nations are trying to avoid sending troops into the area. But while many Western nations are trying to avoid having boots on the ground, they are sending financial aid packages to Ukraine to help Ukraine essentially build a protection around their border in case Russia does invade. Now, the EU has sent a financial aid package to the Ukraine. They sent about $1.3 billion to the Ukraine in order for them to, again, essentially secure their border in case of the attack. Now, Russia has been responding to the way that the Western allies and the UK and the Ukraine are responding to the troops at the border. Now, Putin is essentially saying that NATO is causing the tension. Putin is saying that the Western allies are causing the tension, that without them being there, the tension wouldn't be building the way that it is. And he's essentially putting the blame for talks of an invasion and for the tension on the Western allies. Now, again, this is what's coming out of Russia. This is what Russia is saying. But the intelligence information coming from the area, the intelligence information coming from out of Russia and the Ukraine shows that many believe that this is inevitable, that Russia is going to attack the Ukraine. And if that happens, it could put us in a position where we are essentially at war. Now, many people do not want to go to war. We're in this position where we're in a global pandemic. Many economies are still recovering from the first half of the pandemic. And many people believe that if a war was to happen, that it would essentially bring everyone down with it. Now, again, some people believe that war is inevitable, but President Biden is trying to deal with the situation diplomatically. And the other Western nations are trying to deal with it diplomatically as well before sending any types of troops to the ground. Now, Biden did come out and say that he would hold a summit with Russia in order to stop Russia from invading the Ukraine. And we have to wait to see what Russia is going to say about this. But again, it looks like it's unlikely. And at this time, there's so much tension at the border that one wrong move could essentially cause an attack, could essentially just start conflict. And it does look as though Russia is also waiting for NATO to do something so they can blame the invasion on Western nations. And then let's go ahead and go to the comments. So Wade says, Putin is taking his shirt off and getting on his sword to lead his troops to battle. That is a very interesting imagery. Wade also says, well, they're going to be looking at Biden to lead the charge. He couldn't find his way out of a wet paper bag. Now, I know, Wade, I know you don't like Biden. Whether you like him or not, he is at this moment trying to lead things diplomatically. He's trying to avoid boots on the ground from the U.S. and from other Western nations as well. They're trying to end this conflict before it even starts. However, it's probably not likely, and it looks as though there's nothing that any world leader could actually do. So Milan says, this is all too much. And again, that is what a lot of people are saying. They're saying that it's too much. And even world leaders from across the country are saying that it would be disastrous if this were to happen, especially with what the globe is going through at the moment. We are still in a global pandemic. Many economies are still trying to recover from the first half. This would be too much, and it would cause a lot of issues for the world, again, on a global level. Wade says, history has shown war is good for the economy of anyone other than the losers. So I'm going to disagree with that. Last time we were at war, again, with Afghanistan, economy wasn't doing too great. Christopher Scott Alexander says, will the war boost U.S. economy? I doubt that it will. Now, war can be profitable. Don't get me wrong. War can be very profitable for a lot of different reasons. But at this time, with the breakdown of the supply chain, with COVID, with the lack of people being able to work in the United States at the moment, I think war would have the opposite effect on the economy at the moment. Now, sometimes war can boost the economy. If we go back to World War II, the United States had a major boost in its economy because of World War II, because Western Europe was basically rebuilding, and there's other issues as well. So the United States was able to grow. But because the world economy is at such a fragile state right now, I do not think it would boost the U.S. economy. Again, this is my personal opinion. I do not think it would boost the world economy, but I do think people who are already rich would be able to make more money. So the U.S. as a whole, no, I think it would harm the middle class, but people who are already billionaires and multimillionaires, I think it would be able to boost their pockets. Wade says, doesn't help that we just sent 90 tons of weapons to the Ukraine. Again, they're sending weapons. They're sending weapons, so the U.S. is sending weapons. EU is sending money. They're trying to send aid any way that they can in order to provide Ukraine with what they need. However, they're still waiting to see if they're going to have to send troops. Now, France and Poland have decided that at this time, they will not be sending troops. At this time, they're going to, again, people are sending financial aid, they're sending weapons, but France and Poland have decided that they are not going to be sending troops to the ground. Now, the United States has not made the decision just yet. The United States has not decided whether they're going to send troops or not, and they haven't really made an announcement about that. However, NATO is looking to possibly send more troops. So right now, NATO has about 4,000 troops in several Eastern European nations. So nations essentially surrounding Russia and surrounding the Ukraine. But they're thinking about sending more troops to the surrounding countries in case something does happen, in case the invasion happens. So they have the ability to quickly get troops together and send them towards the border and send them to Ukraine to help them with the situation. Now, again, even though people are preparing for war, because if you look at what each nation is doing, they are essentially preparing for war, even though they want to avoid war at all costs. All the Western nations are trying to do it diplomatically. But again, many people say because Putin has his eyes on Ukraine and essentially views Ukraine as part of Russia, not an independent country, that this is inevitable. And if it doesn't happen in the next couple of months, it will eventually happen. And we've seen that there has been conflict for the past several years between Ukraine and Russia, with Russia invading. This is not something that is new. This is something that has been building and building and building. And it looks as though Putin is ready to come in and essentially take over Ukraine and put a Russian-backed leader in its place. Now, even though countries are preparing for war, they don't want to send boots in. However, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, UK, stated that he's warned Russia that invading Ukraine would be disastrous and painful, violent, and bloody business. It looks as though most nations are trying to avoid war at all costs, and they're trying to avoid sending troops into the ground. However, if Russia does invade Ukraine, essentially what we're going to see is Western allies sending troops, sending weapons, and sending more money. The US will most likely send troops to assist if this does happen. And we could see many other major Western countries send troops as well, essentially causing a war that involves the entire Western Europe, the US, and Eastern Europe as well. And again, people are trying to avoid that at all costs. Now, the US has offered the summit to Putin. So President Biden is offering to have a summit to discuss what's going on and try to keep peace within the border, keep peace in between the two countries. But again, I don't think that is going to happen. Like I stated before, and I keep saying it again, many experts believe that war is inevitable at this time. Well, let's go ahead and pull up these comments. Let's see. Andrew says, those who benefit from war are those who have military contracts, not necessarily the people. And I'm going to have to completely agree with Andrew. At this time, if we do go into war, the economy right now is at a very fragile state, because many things could mess up, shut down the U.S. economy. If we would go into another lockdown, it could possibly be detrimental for the U.S. economy. If we go into war, it could possibly be detrimental to the U.S. economy. But what Andrew is stating, that those who have military contracts, those who already have money, that have power, would benefit. But the middle class and then low-income individuals in the United States, it wouldn't help them financially. And then Philip says, Mel, remember, Putin is not Biden. So please let me know what you mean by that. Wade says, Putin's got balls, Biden's got Alzheimer's, Biden's got no stance other than being a court jester. Now, I'm going to disagree with that, Wade. I'm going to disagree with that. Biden Biden believes in diplomacy over war, obviously. And I think that his efforts are justified. I think President Biden's efforts to try and stop this, to try and be the leader in this, is what he needs to do. However, we all know Putin, no matter who the president is in the United States, he's essentially a warmonger. So that's where that is at that point. And then Philip says, do not underestimate Putin. I don't think anyone's underestimating Putin. I think everyone knows that Putin wants to go to war. Putin likes war. Russia likes war. They like going after what they believe is theirs, even though it's not theirs. So I don't think anyone's underestimating Putin at the moment. But I think many people do know that Putin is going to want to go to war. And he doesn't care who's in his way. I do think the one thing that could stop Putin is if all the Western nations would come to defend Ukraine. So if all of Western Europe, if all of the United States come in to defend Ukraine, I think that is the only thing that would really deter him. If he saw that all the Western nations had boots on the ground, that they were ready to go to war with Ukraine, I think that is the only thing that would eventually stop Putin, because I don't think he thinks that he could take on all of Western Europe and the United States, even during this fragile time. I think he would want to avoid any type of conflict with the powers that be in NATO. I think that's the only thing that would deter him, because he would see that he could lose. But if he does see that the Ukraine is standing on its own, that no one is coming to its aid militarily with boots on the ground, I think he would go in with no problem. So I do think that's the only thing that would deter him. I don't think diplomacy is going to work with Putin, but I do think that if they show a united front militarily, then Putin will think about it. They tried to stop Russia in different ways, through finances, through cutting them out through banks and stuff like that. But again, I think the only deterrent would be all the militaries of the Western world against him. Jima says, this is why I've been saying for months, please pray for peace and diplomacy. And that is true. No one wants to go to war right now. But going back to Andrew's comment, no one wants to go to war unless you have a military contract, because the military contract would make you rich at the moment. Philip says, if he says he's going to invade, it will do it. Remember, he was the director of the KGB. Now, again, he is not saying that he is going to invade. Putin is very good at putting out what he wants to put out to the world. And what I mean by that is, with Putin, he does not want to seem like the aggressor, even though we all see that he is the aggressor. He has the troops at the border. But again, with the rhetoric that's coming out of Russia, especially to the Russian people, he is essentially saying, hey, look, I can have troops here, but NATO is the one who's causing the tension. What NATO is doing is causing all the issues. NATO is the reason why there's tension between us. And he essentially wants to make it look as though NATO and the Western world is the one that's going to cause the war. Putin keeps saying that he is not thinking about invading, even though all the intelligence information shows that he is. But he's going to continue to spin the story that he is not the one that wants to invade. So at the end of the day, when the invasion happens, when the conflict happens, he can blame it on the Western powers and saying that they are the ones causing the tension and the conflict, like he's doing even at this moment. Wade says, how's your Russian? If we go to war, better learn, because we're going to be speaking it, comrade. We'll be fine. I will say this. The United States does not have a good track record when it comes to war. I always put this question out there. Let me know when the last time the United States won a war, because the United States spends a lot of money, more than any other nation, more than the top 10 following nations combined, right? The United States spends a lot of money on military, more than anyone else in the world, yet the United States is really, really bad at war. So while the United States doesn't have a good track record when it comes to winning wars, we'll be fine. Even when we lose, we're fine because it doesn't necessarily involve what's happening on American soil. Because Europe is so intertwined and so connected and so close, even Europe and Eastern Europe, right? Very intertwined. So when they do go to war, it affects them right there. But when the United States goes to war, since we are across the pond, even when we lose, it doesn't really affect us or having to speak Russia. So just responding to Wade there. Philip says, LOL, Wade. Wade also says, our commander-in-chief can't figure out how to add gas to an electric car. I'll leave that right there. We're all going to die. Again, it's a little bit of fear-mongering, Wade. We've been at war. We've been at war for a very long time, just came out of it. Probably about to go right back into another war. But the U.S. is almost always at war and always losing. And it doesn't matter who our commander-in-chief is. We've gone through wars with Republican, Democrat, presidents. It's all the same thing. The U.S. is just bad at war. But at the end of the day, it doesn't affect us in a way where it's going to change the way that we're living. So, no. So with Biden being in office, I think it'll be the same whether it was Biden or Trump or any other Democrat or Republican, because that's just how we roll with war. Andrew says, if war was on the table, we should attack Moscow. We have no reason to attack Moscow. Obviously, Moscow, Russia is a pain in our thorn in our side. Russia is a thorn in our side, and they cause a lot of problems. So we have no real reason to attack Moscow. We have the reasons to defend Ukraine, but no real reason to attack Moscow. And if the United States were to attack Moscow on its own, it would lose. And the reason it would lose militarily isn't necessarily military versus military. It's because Russia has the ability to attack and bring us down on the cyber side of things. As you've seen happening for the past couple of years, Russian hackers can easily come into the United States via the interwebs, via the internet, and take down hospitals, take down pipelines and stuff like that. So if the U.S. were to go to war with Russia one-on-one, we wouldn't win. It would be bad. They would knock down our cybersecurity is a joke when it comes to Russian hackers, and they would just come in and essentially shut us down. Philip says, no, Wade, I believe in Kamala and Biden, not Biden. She'll put some sense into him. The vice president has no real power. Their power is literally just sitting there in case the president dies. So again, you can have all the faith in Kamala all you want, but vice presidents have no real power. They don't. Wade says, that's what the night pills are for. Philip says, and pump up his beat. You know what I mean? Wade says, bingo, how's your Russian? Again, Wade, even if we go to war with the rest of the Western allies to defend the Ukraine, we'll still be fine, even though we constantly lose war. Again, the U.S. it's really good at losing war, but it doesn't affect us here on the home front because the war is never fought on the home front. Jima says, Russia is a pain in our sides. Well said. The sad reality, Russia will always be a pain, and they will always be a pain. And again, right now is a horrible time to go into any kind of conflict. Right now, Russia is applying pressure to Ukraine. They have the troops on the ground, and many people believe that war is inevitable. Western powers are still trying to deal with this diplomatically. They're meeting today. So again, many world leaders in Europe, Western Europe, and the United States are meeting today to decide what they're going to do about Russia and how they can potentially stop Russia from invading Ukraine. But also, another thing that will be discussed today is what will they do if Russia attacks Ukraine? France and Poland says right now they're not sending troops. The United States hasn't decided they're sending troops, and NATO is strongly considering sending more troops to surrounding countries. So again, I will keep you guys updated about this, about the threat of Russia invading the Ukraine. At the end of the day, it's going to affect the entire globe. right now is a horrible time to go into war because many economies are still struggling. The global economy is struggling. We have the breakdown of the supply chain. We have COVID-19, which is still affecting each and every single person. We're in a global pandemic. This would be a horrible time to go to war. It's always a bad time to go to war, but this would be a horrible time to go to war. And I do think it would negatively affect the middle class and low-income families if we did go to war at this time. So let's go to the comments. Wade says, we don't lose, we just fail to win. Spoken like a true American there. And then Joanna says, shaking my head. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Mel. I come live every single Monday through Wednesday to bring you guys current events and let you know what's happening across the globe and right here in our great nation as well. I will keep you guys updated about everything that's going on with Ukraine, Russia, and where we stand with this conflict. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see each and every single one of you bright and early tomorrow morning. Have a great day, everyone. This has been Live with Mel.